Stay tuned to meet a couple who overcame adversity and was determined to do God's will no matter the cost. My name is Jason Bradley, and you're watching Urban Report. Hello and welcome to Urban Report. My guests today are Ian and Angela Vandervalk, and they are a huge part of our 3ABN production team. Welcome to Urban Report, Ian and Angela.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. It's great to have you guys here. Since you've been at 3ABN, I've had the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better and also taste some delicious food.
That's right.
Yeah. But while doing so, I got to hear your powerful testimony. And I want to start with a little bit of your background, your upbringing with both of you. So how were you raised? Let's start with you, Ann.
You go?
No, go ahead.
All right. Well, I grew up in an Irish Catholic home.
Okay.
I went to Catholic schools my whole life, from pre-K all the way through high school. The family that I was in, though, we weren't very spiritual. We just kind of went to church on what was deemed the important days, like Christmas and Easter and things of that nature. But we never really sat down as a family or read the Bible or anything like that. It was just, my mom worked in a Catholic school, so I went to Catholic schools. And
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. So you didn't have the firm spiritual foundation.
No, there was really no foundation. Even in being raised in a Catholic school, I didn't really, put forth the effort or time to really learn about God or anything.
Gotcha. And Angela, what about you?
Well, I was raised in a Seventh-day Adventist home.
Okay.
My family went to church, my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, everybody went to church, and I have a good memory of that. But when I became a teenager, just one day my parents just stopped going. And so we left the church, and I was out of church probably until I was about 24.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Now, when you two met, were you in church then?
Actually, no, neither of us were really in church at the time. I definitely was not. I was through and through 100% part of the world. I was not involved in the church, didn't attend church, didn't read my Bible, had zero relationship with God at the time. I was just kind of looking for worldly pleasures and doing worldly things. So without a question, we were not in the church when we met.
Yeah.
So
So you were both kind of in the same state, though?
Yes.
Yeah, at the time, she was a single mom when we met too, working 2 jobs and,
Going to school.
going to school. So she really didn't set the time to go to church or wasn't even part of
Yeah.
that either then too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you notice something missing in your life?
Looking back on it now, I would say at the time I didn't, but looking back, yeah, there was a big part that was missing in my life for sure.
Did you feel like you were trying to fill voids with other things?
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
Without question. I mean, I was, it was the party scene, the nightlife. I grew up in South Florida near Fort Lauderdale, Miami. So that's kind of what you do down there. And especially if you don't have God in your heart, you're just living in the clubs and it's all about drinking and drugs and partying. That's really all it's about. And that's kind of what I use to fill my life with, is just, all the outside things, like I said, the drinking and the drugs and women and clubbing and, dancing, all of that. That's pretty much what I did.
Yeah, yeah. And you found that it was empty.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So what were you doing for work? What was your career?
Well, at the time I was a bookkeeper for a company.
Okay.
So I worked in a vault just counting money, but I had lost that job at one point. The company I worked for had shut down, and we had actually just gotten married maybe a year prior to that. And when the company shut down, I started looking for a job and I couldn't find one. And Angela then told me that she's pregnant. I'm unemployed, so I didn't know what to do.
Things got real.
Things got real quick. So what I did is my father and my grandfather were both had served in the Army.
Okay.
My father was a pharmacy tech, and my grandfather was actually a spy in World War II.
Wow.
So there was a legacy there within my family about serving in the military, so I thought maybe this is a good time to look into it. So both my wife and I went there and talked to a recruiter, and I decided this is the best option, so I enlisted in the Army for 4 years.
Wow.
And I served a total of almost 12 years in the Army.
Wow. Now, I know that, when you're in the military, no matter what branch you're in, there's a lot of travel involved, and there's some challenges that, come up. What challenges did you guys face in your relationship when you joined the Army?
Oh boy. Well, when I joined the Army, that's kind of when everything started to fall apart. The time that, I had spent in basic training and being away from her, and then AIT, which is kind of like the schooling that you go to for your specific job that you're going to have within the Army. So we spent, I don't know, maybe about 6 or 7 months being apart from each other, and I might have saw her one day in that time. So it was hard. And when I joined, I don't know what happened, but maybe it's because I didn't have all of that nightlife involved. I didn't have those things that I could just, fill my life with, and that void. So I became very depressed.
Yeah.
And it was tough. So that time in the military, I became basically an alcoholic. I drank all the time. It was, every day. I started making extremely poor choices in my life, and the job that I had at the time in the military, I would have to say about every day I was watching people die.
Wow.
And it took a toll on me because, you're working 8 to 10 hours a day, and you're witnessing, someone's life being taken.
Yeah.
And, you played a part in that. And then I would have to come home and all of a sudden flip a switch and become a father and a husband, and I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And on top of me being, dealing with depression and not really sharing it with anybody, just trying to control those emotions of my own, I started to fall apart.
Yeah.
And, with the drinking and it's hard for me to say, but as a married couple, I did, some of the worst things that I could do to my wife, and I committed adultery. And it wasn't just once, I did it on multiple occasions. And, it's hard to forgive myself. I know the Lord does forgive me for absolutely, but I still, in some ways, I carry that weight with me.
Yeah.
Because of what I did and the pain that I caused my wife. And, she was very much a part of the church at that time. And she had rededicated her life to the Lord.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. Angela, I want to know, what were your feelings while Ian was gone at the Army?
I was really sad. It was sad. And then before he joined the Army and before we got married, I gave my life back to God. I was smoking, I was drinking, and my cousin invited me to an evangelistic meeting. And I went there smoking and drinking and left there. I came as I was because everybody's always like, come as you are. So I did. I was smoking about a pack and a half a day and drinking on the weekends. And I went and I just gave my heart to God and stopped all that. So when we got married, praise God that I gave my heart to God before we got married. And when we got married, I was already in love with him. So I was like, God is not going to come before you. So I was like, God comes first, I meant to say. And so I told him that up front. I was like, before we get married, I just want you to know I love God, and you may not go to church, but God comes first in my life. And he respected that. And but when he went away and he told me what he was doing, it was very hard for me. And, my first thing is, I'm not going to be with no man that cheats on me. There's no way, And I'm like, forget this, I'm leaving. But I was like, God, what is your will? What is your will? What do you want me to do? And my cousin, she went through this similar before I did. And then she's like, I spoke to her and she's like, just read Psalms and Proverbs and pray for your husband, pray for your marriage. She's like, fight for it. So I did, and I prayed, and every time, throughout the years would be fine. Then it would happen again, and then he's drinking, and then it happened. So I just kept praying for God's will to be done, and I would fight with God. I would be like, why do you want me with this man? I don't want to be with him. I don't want to be hurting anymore. But God had a plan. And now it's just a wonderful marriage. And I'm just so thankful and praise God that I have this wonderful husband now that he just loves the Lord.
Yes, amen. Yeah. Ian, when Angela came to the Lord, did you feel like you were married to a different person
100%. She completely changed, and we were not at the same level at that point. You know, she had accepted the Lord and accepted Him completely into her life. So, you know, I didn't really know much about having a relationship with God, so I just kind of told her, you know, yeah, sure, it's fine with me, you know. But I was still drinking, I was still smoking, I was still very much a part of the world, and she was not. So we couldn't really relate anymore. There was a lot of things that we just didn't, we started losing in common. And, you know, but we kept moving forward as a couple. And, you know, throughout all of the adultery and the drinking and the arguments and the fighting, I mean, it was constant and it was cyclical, you know. Something would happen and I would be good for a while, but then because of the hurt that I've caused her and she didn't know how to deal with it, she started, you know, and I don't blame her for it, but, you know, berating me and putting me down and things like that. So then I started feeling even worse about myself, and it wasn't really her fault. You know, it was just, she didn't know how to deal with the emotions either at that time.
Yes.
And, you know, we just kept moving forward and kept moving forward, but it hit a point where in our marriage and our relationship where she couldn't take it anymore. And she was 100% done, and I don't blame her for it. So she left to go to North Carolina, and mind you, we lived in Georgia at the time, and she just kind of took a little vacation kind of to get away from me. And she had told me that she wanted a divorce. Wow. And this is when, at the same time, my mother was sick with cancer, and she had been dealing with and battling with it for several years. So I essentially lost it, and I became suicidal. I was on the phone with my brother, and I was crying uncontrollably. All the emotions that were flooding through my head, all I wanted to do was die. Because in my head, I'm losing the two most important women in my life. And the only thing that actually saved me was my son. Because my son was in the home with me at that time, and I kept thinking in my head that I don't want my son to find me dead in the house. You know, I don't want him to have that image for the rest of his life. So as soon as she came home, I went to my leadership in the Army, and I explained to them what I had going on. And they immediately took me to the military medical hospital. And I was put on suicide watch and had to go through counseling for about 4 days. During that time, or after the 4 days when I got released, my brother had called me and said, hey, Mom is not doing well. You need to come down here and go to the hospital. So I went down there to visit her, and 4 days later she died. Now this was the moment where I think in anybody's life, you're either going to go left or you're going to go right. This, you know, and it was 4 days earlier where I was on suicide watch. You know, I wanted to end my life, and now my mother is dead, and I didn't know how to handle these emotions. I had fear, anger, upset, you know, but at the same time I was happy because my mom didn't have to go through that pain anymore.
Yeah, she wasn't suffering.
No, she wasn't. So a few more days had gone by, and I called up my wife and I said, you know, listen, you're never going to have to worry again. And she didn't believe me. She just goes, yeah, right, whatever. And, you know, and I didn't blame her because at this point talk was cheap. So I couldn't just talk the talk. I had to walk the walk. And, you know, I can't thank her enough, and really for the Lord, because, you know, as bad as she wanted to leave, she listened to the Lord and not her emotions and not what she wanted. You know, so she listened to God, and she never left, and she stuck by my side. And that was the moment where things in the Lord really started to work in my life.
Yeah.
He really started to make some changes.
And I want to go into that, but I want to say that is very powerful that you had that forgiveness in your heart. You know, that's clearly from the Lord, that God placed that forgiveness in your heart. And it's powerful that you accepted that and you extended that to Ian, and you guys are sitting here today. And you know, like, having the opportunity to get to know you, I think you guys are a wonderful couple.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled that you guys are out here.
Yeah.
You know, you've been through a lot.
Absolutely.
You had come to the point where you just wanted to end it all.
I did.
But your son was there. It's amazing how God uses children to get to the parents, to reach the parents. So as you're taking this turn now, you've received that forgiveness, and you've seen, you know, that Christ-like attitude in your wife, in Angela.
That's right.
Now that you're taking that turn, what happened?
Well, you know, so I started attending church just a little bit here and there. But I was getting more and more involved. You know, in the past when I would go to church, I was more of a seat warmer. I just kind of went to make my wife happy, and that was it. I had no intentions of sitting there and learning. If anything, I was looking at my watch, counting down the time of when we could get out of there. But, you know, so I started attending church more and more, but I was sincere this time. And I had a friend of hers, her husband, who I had never met, and I won't go into the whole story, but he basically, who I never met, had known nothing about, never talked to this man, and he did an act of kindness towards me and my family that nobody would really do. But to make a long story short, essentially my AC broke, and he sent somebody out there and paid for it to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's really expensive sometimes.
Yes, it is.
So,
yes.
He's never met Jason.
Never met the man.
Yeah.
And he's one of my best friends now.
Yeah.
His name is Jason. So
Look, he sounds like a good guy to
he's
me.
a great guy. He's a great guy.
That's right.
But it just kind of made me wonder, you know, maybe there's something more to Christ and being a part of a church and to having a relationship with God. And so Angela went to then, I don't know how much longer afterwards, but she went to an evangelistic series.
His wife showed me.
That's right.
Jennifer.
And it was Pastor Kenny Shelton.
Yeah.
Wow,
Behold
Uncle
the Lamb
Kenny.
Ministry.
Yeah.
That's right. So she went there and came back and just said, you know, hey, Ian, you know, would you be open to seeing this guy? He's an amazing preacher. And I said, sure. You know, I'll go with you. Because, again, I was starting to drift more towards the Lord at this time. I couldn't tell, but now looking back, I could see him working. And so I went to this series. And it was just incredible. The things that Pastor Kenny was saying, and especially at the end when he made an appeal, I didn't take that lightly. And I had seen appeals done before, and you know, you see people stand up, and I just kind of took it as, you know, they're just doing that because they have to stand up. You know, but for me, I'm not going to do that unless I truly mean it. So he made an appeal, and that first night, I couldn't do it. I started hearing voices in my head telling me, you know, I'm not good enough. You know, you're nobody. Look at the pain that you've caused your wife. Look at the pain you've caused your family and to all those that you love. You know, how can God accept you? He can't do that. He can't love you. So that first night, I never stood up.
So and the devil was attacking.
Without question.
Yes,
And I told her the story afterwards and the things that I had been experiencing while I was in that church. Because when I wanted to stand, I'll tell you, my legs got heavy. I felt a pressure on my chest. You know, the palms started to sweat. It was, you know, I was going through a spiritual battle. And so I asked her later that night after explaining it to her, I just said, hey, you know, can we go again tomorrow and see him? And she had plans because she was actually, Adventures?
Yes.
Yeah, she was doing Adventures the following day, and she canceled all of her plans, and she's like, I am taking my husband
I love it.
back to see this, you know, this evangelistic series and hear Pastor Kenny. So I went again, and the same thing started happening all over. And but that night, I decided to give my heart to the Lord, and I completely surrendered at that moment. And I was still smoking at the time too. So I had made changes in my life. Previously to that, I had stopped drinking, but at that moment, I was still smoking, and I quit. You know, praise God, because it took a lot of prayer.
That was a miracle.
Yes.
I think that's when she knew, okay, something's...
He's serious this time.
Yeah.
Because I smoked for about 20 years. And, and I just, with the help of the Lord, I quit.
You don't even look like you're old enough to smoke 20 years. But
That's right.
Wow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. So, Angela, how were you feeling when he gave his heart to the Lord?
That was awesome. It was really, I prayed for my husband for 11 years, and I really prayed for him and prayed for him to give his life to the Lord. I would say the same prayer over and over. God, please help my husband to stop drinking. Please help my husband to stop smoking. Please help my husband to give his life to you. And that was my prayer usually every night for 11 years. I prayed for him. So when he finally did fully commit, it was wonderful. But the struggles, you know, when you give your heart to the Lord, it doesn't stop there.
That's right.
That's just the beginning of it.
That's right.
And it was for us.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that out. But, you know, I think something else that's powerful, too, is that you prayed and you asked and you kept on asking. You asked again and you kept on asking. Like, that's powerful. It speaks to the fervent prayer and that persistence in prayer, and that's key.
Yeah.
So what happened? Because it's not smooth sailing just because you become a Christian. Things
It
can
gets
get
worse.
tough.
Not at all. Absolutely. Right after, you know, dedicating my heart to the Lord, I received orders from the Army to go to Texas. And I had to be there within 90 days. And that's not totally uncommon, but for me and what I had experienced and the people that I have known and the soldiers I had known, I hadn't seen that in a long time. So.
And we owned a house.
Yeah, and we owned a house at the time.
So we couldn't just pick up and leave.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had a lot going on at that moment. So I was really struggling with the decision I needed to make. And at this point, I wanted to do what the Lord wanted me to do. I did not want to do my way at all from that point forward. So I kept praying and praying and praying every night. And I was waking up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and just thinking about what I should do and what the Lord wants me to do, just sleepless nights constantly. And it got to the point where, I wasn't hearing anything back. And I thought that maybe those voices that I was hearing in my head, telling me I'm not good enough at that evangelistic series, telling me that God doesn't love me and the things that I've done, he can't accept me. It started to consume me, and I became filled with anger, and I actually began to curse God. Wow. And I even called up my wife, and I just said, yep. And I just said, God hates me. God doesn't love me. He's not answering. I thought this is, once I become, a servant of his, and I accept him and allow him to come into my life, he's supposed to guide me, and I'm not getting any guidance. So when I was on the phone with her, that was where she really drew the line. She said, you're cursing God, I'm done with you. You've put me through enough. And I raced home from work and, kept her on the phone. And as soon as I came in there, she was in the bed, sitting in the bed in our bedroom and just started reading the Bible. And crying her eyes out.
Reading the Bible, yeah.
But as I heard her reading the Bible, I became fueled even more with anger because I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And she kept telling me, just pray. And I said, I don't want to pray to God. I can't pray to God. He's left me. He doesn't love me. And when she would stop reading the Bible, everything would just calm down. And then she would start reading it out loud, and I would get angry all over again. And when I looked at myself in the mirror in our bathroom, which is right next to our bedroom, my eyes didn't look like me. I knew it was me, but it didn't look like me. I was just so angry, and it seemed like there was another person in me. It was like another spiritual attack all over again. But this was after my baptism, so you would think, why are you going to go through something like this? And it felt like Satan was throwing an army after me, and I couldn't understand that either. I was wondering, why am I so important that Satan wants me so bad?
Because you're a child of God.
That's right. And so, needless to say, that night I slept alone.
I hope your couch was comfortable, buddy.
Well, we had a spare bedroom. So he wasn't hurting too bad.
That's right. So I was in the bed, and I was just, I couldn't pray, but I got 3 words out, and that was, God, help me.
Wow.
And that's all I really needed to say, because that next day I woke up and I felt calm. And the day after that, I was even more at peace. And I became fueled with this fire and this passion for the Lord. Yeah. And I was, waking up early, having my own devotional. Sometimes just at 4:30 in the morning, I'd wake up and I would just start reading and studying my Bible to the point where she's wondering, hey, I need your help around the house. Can you do something here?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
But I began to find that balance between family and the Lord because, and it was just incredible. We would be places, and I would just tell her,
I just want to serve the Lord. He just kept saying that. I don't know what I'm going to do, because he was hired by a contractor.
Okay.
And
well, before that though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
I don't mean to.
No, that's okay.
But I had made the decision to get out of the Army, which was very tough because, you have medical insurance that you don't have to pay for, and your family would go to the hospital, go in the emergency room, and they're covered. Yeah. And that was huge because I thought, if I get out of the Army, how am I as a man of the home going to take care of my family?
Yes.
And we just kind of, I made a decision. We were at church one night, and I just saw my wife and my kids with our church family, and I just said, this is where we need to be. This is where I'm going to grow in Christ. Wow. So we did it, and we decided to get out, and that was it. And then we just relied on the Lord to take us the rest of the way.
Yeah. So I heard, Angela, you were about to go into some contract work real quick.
Yes. Yeah. He got a job as a contractor, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to serve the Lord. So.
Because I would essentially been going back to what I'd been doing before, which is
Gotcha.
taking lives again.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want
Yes.
to, but I left in the Lord's hand. I said, God, you know, I'm hired. You know,
Yeah.
I haven't started yet, and they haven't given me a start date, but I'm hired.
I love that.
You know.
You went out with faith. So how did you end up coming to 3ABN?
Well, we had sent our resumes up, and when we sent it to Jill, it was during the, I think it was the camp meeting at the time.
Okay.
But you know, prior to that, it was I didn't know what to do anymore. You know, I didn't have a job, but we had no income anymore. So I just, as time went on, I kept saying, you know, I don't know, I just didn't know what to do. I was just so confused.
Yeah.
So, but I sent our resumes up to Jill because actually Pastor John Lomacang, who I reached out to early on in my Christianity and my walk with God, I had sent him an email and he responded back and gave me some very powerful words of encouragement.
Yeah.
And but he called me up and just said that I you know, talked to Jill Morricone about your guys' story and she wants your guys' resume. So I was blown away when that happened.
Yeah, that was a miracle.
So yeah, absolutely. So you sent the resume in, and you didn't hear from Jill for a little while. Did you begin to get discouraged?
Absolutely, I did. And it seemed, my friend Jason, he worked for a company, and I said, you know, I need a job. You know, what do you got? I can't wait any longer. And as soon as I said that is when I got the phone call from Pastor John.
Wow.
And then as more, you know, then we had our interviews and everything else, but then more time had passed. And then, you know, I think I don't know how long it was, but it was over a month.
After that time that passed the second time, did you get discouraged again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It happened all over again. As time passed, I was trying to, you know, I couldn't understand why everything was taking so long, but it was God working through me because I can tell you without question, he was teaching me patience and about waiting.
And his timing.
His timing.
Absolutely.
But then the phone rang again, didn't
And
it?
as soon as I was in the wife of my car and I said, I can't wait any longer, I need a job.
You're in the car with your wife?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And the second time, you know, bing, my phone went off and it was an email from Jill inviting us up here for another interview.
What a blessing.
Wow.
And God has provided everything for us, all our needs.
All of our needs.
That's
All of
huge.
our needs.
And you made a point, you said that no matter what they were going to pay, you were going to come.
Yep, we made it. We, you know, basically told God, whatever it is, whatever the pay, we don't care.
Trust in you.
We're going to trust in you that you will provide, and that's what we did.
And he has.
And he did, because right after our interview, we saw that, you know, with me being a veteran, that I got veterans assistance, and I started getting paid.
Yeah,
So
that is huge. Your story is truly inspiring.
Yep.
The lessons of forgiveness that we've seen, the perseverance, God showing up on time. And I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your transparency and all of that. And I want to thank you for joining us. Well, we've reached the end of another program. Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time. God bless.